I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Bowling Green. Good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to everyone on the internet, wherever and whenever you may be. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my fantabulous co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together Rebecca and I are going to craft another amazing hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about them in the ways that they affect you, your wealth, your health, and happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your family, and the geese that are still trying to figure out which way to fly here, and the eagles and the turkeys, because Rebecca and I saw this huge flock of turkeys.
So many turkeys.
Yeah, it's like
lots of turkeys.
It's like 30 big, healthy-looking turkeys.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was a spirit lifter, and you see a lot of critters like that just doing their critter thing.
We got the creek near the studio here, so that's
right. But we're not
Swan Creek.
But we're not going to tell people exactly where, because people, there are people who will show up and. Yeah, never mind. Just leave the turkeys alone, okay? They're out of season. Okay. Anyway, we have a good show lined up for you today. No guest, but we're going to be we're going to do a big follow-up on last week's story about House Bill 308, because I ended up going down to Columbus, testifying against it, and had all kinds of observations from that experience. And then we will hear from our patrons and sponsors. And then, Rebecca, what will you be talking about?
I will be talking about bilbies.
Bilbies. Okay. Yeah. It sounds like a cute
critters.
word.
It is. It sounds like something that the Hobbit would have for a pet. It looks like that, too, actually.
Cool. And then after that, it's ecological news. And so, given the lack of guests, today is a perfect day for you folks to call in at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007 on any kind of ecological or environmental question you may have, because we've sure got a lot going on ecology-wise and environmental-wise. And, locally right now, what we're having today is rain, which is, that's because the temperatures right now are roughly 6 degrees above average. And I looked at the National Weather Service's Climate Prediction Service, and for the next 2 weeks, they're predicting above normal temperatures for the whole continent, except for the very deep south, like Florida and Louisiana. And down there, they're not going to have above average temperatures. They're just going to have average temperatures. So the difference, of course, gets higher as you move further north, because that's how global warming works. The poles are heating up much faster and much hotter than the rest of the planet. So Alaska's going to have very warm weather for the next couple weeks here for Christmas. And I just, we had rain. We had a lot of rain last night. And I just wanted to take a minute to remember snow. You might want to talk to your kids about this stuff. We used to have this white fluffy stuff that would
Yeah.
come down from the sky, and it would like pile up. And you could sometimes, if the temperature was right, you could roll it up into balls and make like little figures and stuff, and you could ski on it.
It was cold and wet, but at the same time, really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and it made everything pretty. If you didn't have your yard cleaned up quite by the end of fall, the snow would come and it would just look beautiful until
There you go.
spring. Then it would melt. But it's important that we don't forget about snow.
Yeah.
But
Snow is neat.
yeah. So anyway, as I said, I drove to Columbus on Tuesday to testify against this House Bill 308, which is an insane bill that declares nuclear power green energy. It also does a lot of other equally insane things, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But
Which will sort of make you glow green, so,
yeah, I suppose. Well, actually, it's blue.
Blue, okay.
That's the color of radiation. Like
It's blue energy.
is blue, right? Yeah. So I had some coworkers that tried to play a practical joke on me once, that we got a shipment of parts in from Japan, from Fukushima, Japan, and they got a glow stick and they broke it and like poured it all over stuff, and they were like, "Joe, there's something weird about this." So I went in and looked, and it was like they used green glow sticks, so I knew right away that wasn't really radiation.
Yeah.
It was a good joke, though. I
There you
really
go.
appreciated that. So anyway, as I was driving to Columbus, of course, I was making my usual eco observations, and along with the warmness that we've had most of the year, we had a couple weeks there where we were a few degrees below average this past week, pretty much. That's over now for the next couple weeks, but I noticed the levels of water, that we've had a drought up here in Northwest Ohio, but it's been much, much more serious down in Southeast Ohio. And Columbus was close enough that I could really see the effects of that drought. There were ponds that had docks that were just hanging out in the air.
Oh, my.
And the Olentangy River, which is the river that flows right through the middle of
Now
Columbus.
you've messed with our borrow hole. You know what a borrow hole is?
No.
It's those square, rectangular, or triangular ponds that they scooped out the dirt to put to make the overpass with.
Oh, okay.
And that's the name for them in Northwest Ohio. Because in Northwest Ohio, overpass is basically the major geographical feature for miles and miles.
Right.
So
the highest point.
We came up with a name for those little ponds because of that.
And what was that exactly?
Borrow hole.
Borrow hole. Okay. So anyway, the Olentangy River was practically dry. You could literally walk right across from one shore to the other. And, it's just another example of the changing things that are happening in terms of global warming. Now, we are responding, and I have a little more information on this in one of our environmental news stories, but I did also notice there's definitely more electric cars on the road. Definitely more EVs and plug-in hybrids. We are making the transition, but we're making it too slowly to survive at this point. So let's pick up the pace, folks. All right. Anyway, on to a little more detail on House Bill 308. So the official title of HB 308 is Include Energy Generated by Nuclear Reaction as Green Energy. And this was a bill that was sponsored by Representative Stein originally. And Representative Stein, those of you who have been following our HB 6 madness since the beginning of this show, he was the representative that AEP at that very first House Bill 6 hearing said, we look forward to working with you to improve the bill. And Stein was the one who leaned forward drooling and like, oh, yes, I look forward to working with you too. And then 2 weeks later, they added coal plants to the bailout, which was supposed to be all nuclear. So anyway, Stein wrote up this terrible, terrible bill that calls nuclear green, but that's not all that it does. Okay, it actually also, it's what I call a Trojan tank, because it did a whole bunch of other stuff. It also declared fracked gas clean, which, methane is a greenhouse gas, and fracking releases as much it leaks as much methane as it collects, and there's just no way fracked gas is actually clean. It also declared coal clean energy.
All
Yeah,
right. So what exactly is not clean
Well,
energy then?
but the thing is, that it's only clean. The coal is only clean if you mix it with other things that reduces its emissions,
I see.
like methane.
Oh, great.
So you could mix coal and methane, and now it's clean. Either one. And also wood chips. They like to mix wood chips with coal. So tearing down forests to mix in with the coal to reduce the coal emissions is clean, according to Ohio, to the state of Ohio.
So the only form of dirty energy would be pure 100% coal.
Old
Yes.
old school coal, right?
Right. Okay.
Right. Without any, yeah. So
There's only one, apparently, that's in any way harmful to the environment. All right, whatever.
obviously, no basis in reality for this
No.
bill, and a bunch of us showed up there. There were about 15 of us or so that were there to oppose it, and 8 of us testified. And you could see this testimony. It's still on the Ohio channel. You've got to go to the Senate Energy and Public Utilities Committee on the Ohio channel, and you can watch the testimony. The testimony in this was the very first thing that plays, so you don't have to wait too long, and it's not too long to watch, because we humans, us actual citizens who were there to talk to the Ohio Senate, we were all limited to 3 minutes, and the corporations that came, because there were corporations there to testify on other bills, they were allowed to speak as long as they wanted. They took 10, 15 minutes.
Of course, yes.
But us humans were relegated to 3 minutes. And I actually wanted to read you folks my testimony, because
Cool.
I think it's pretty good. And I sort of got cut off on it because I kind of went over my 3 minutes by like 30 seconds or something. So can't have that.
Oh, no.
We could declare nuclear power green,
Right,
but we
right.
can't have people going, over their time.
I know rules are important.
Yeah. So anyway, here's my testimony. I am offering this opponent testimony for the simple reason that the premise of HB 308, that nuclear power is clean energy, is false. Nuclear power is dirty literally from beginning to end. Mining releases radioactive contaminants that have poisoned large swaths of the American West, especially in the Navajo Nation. Fuel fabrication creates huge volumes of radioactive wastes that have contaminated areas like Piketon, Fernalt, France, Sellafield, England, Japan, and thousands of sites around the world. Normal plant operations require routine radiation releases, and epidemiological studies routinely show cancer and miscarriage rates increasing around nuclear plants during their operation that drop back to normal after the plants close. The wastes from nuclear plants have contaminated hundreds of places around the globe, including the U.S.'s only approved waste storage site, the Waste Isolation Pilot Project in New Mexico. That was supposed to have isolated wastes for tens of thousands of years, but instead has resulted in contamination of the surrounding area in just a few dozen years. As you may know, nuclear wastes remain deadly for at least 240,000 years. That figure represents 10 half-lives of plutonium, one of the deadliest isotopes. Plutonium is a completely man-made toxin. Any plutonium that was around when the Earth formed disappeared billions of years ago. Nothing we do today, none of our science, industry, or entertainment justifies creating radioactive poison that will be killing, maiming, and sickening our descendants for hundreds of thousands of years. Christ said, "Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me." Radiation hurts the unborn child more than any other. Children are more susceptible to radiation than adults. Women are more susceptible than men. Choosing to create more radioactive wastes is literally choosing to persecute the unborn, women, and children for longer than any of us could really claim to comprehend. And this price does not need to be paid. Wind, solar, and storage technologies have finally arrived. They can more than supply all our energy needs without making the planet permanently less habitable. I have heard many myths from state legislators on this topic. They have claimed we need nuclear for base load power. That is false. Two of the larger electrical grids on the planet, Germany and South Australia, have moved away from baseload. They are also two of the most stable grids on Earth, much more stable than their surrounding provinces and countries, because baseload is inherently unstable. Whenever you pin grid stability on huge centralized power plants, and when those power plants inevitably suffer emergency shutdowns, it destabilizes the entire grid. South Korea last year suffered a regional blackout when one of their nuclear plants had to do an emergency shutdown. In the U.S., a nuke plant crashes on average at least once a week. These crashes can be minor, such as a breaker tripping, or major, such as fires and coolant leaks. But every time a gigawatt of power drops out in a fraction of a second, the whole grid is in peril. That's why all nuke plants require coal or gas backups that are kept constantly running but idling, ready to start generating at a moment's notice. These plants put millions of tons of CO2 into the air every year just to keep our nuclear plants running. So even the low carbon label applied to nukes is a myth. Since HB6, Ohio's energy policy has fallen further and further behind the rest of the world. Wind and solar, truly clean renewables, are growing all over the world. But Ohio is stuck with last century's technologies: coal, gas, and nukes. The Ohio legislature should be working to put us back in the lead, not dropping us further behind with this dangerous nuclear fantasy. So that's what
Bravo.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's what I wanted to say, and I did get most of that into my testimony. And all the testimony was excellent. So if you want to go to the Ohio channel and watch it.
So how's life around Fernald? I remember that specifically because I organized a protest against Fernald in the 80s at one point.
Well, I mean, it's like every place that's been contaminated. They, paid attention to it for a while.
Actually, I helped organize. Mostly it was the kids from the Quaker College down there. Sorry, go ahead.
Right. But you never really get rid of all the contamination. I mean, it's literally once you've put radioactive isotopes out into the environment, they're there forever. So.
I remember they were saying something back then about there'd been a concern recently that some of the concrete silos that they're storing the waste in that might collapse because of excessive snow buildup. And I was like, and God helps us if a squirrel has to go to the bathroom on one of them or something, that they're toast.
Yeah.
That's not reassuring at all to me.
So it's another nasty leftover from nuclear technology that I'd be confident to say it's still hurting people.
Yeah.
But there has been some cleanup efforts. I have to also say I'm not sure exactly how far along those are.
Right.
But yeah. So
might be good to get on that.
yeah, all right.
Saying.
Yeah, we'll take a look. So anyway, I called this a Trojan tank because it had other stuff in it besides the nuclear. So you have this really horrible bill, and then hidden inside it is even more horribleness.
Yay.
So like I mentioned, the coal is now clean. The fracked gas is now clean. One of the things they put an amendment in right after we spoke, and it increased the fracking leases inside state parks.
What?
Yes.
Okay.
It just increased them from 3 years to 5 years.
Oh.
So,
great.
They've already said this past year, you can frack in parks.
Frack Yellowstone.
What are parks
that can't
for?
end badly at all.
Yeah. But they said, when they first started proposing it, they were like, but the leases will only be for 3 years. So in the inside of HB 308, now the leases are 5 years.
Of course.
They also have had several other bills that were being considered that day. So we sat through the whole hearing. They were all also horrible. HB 264 says that coke plants, the companies that make coke for steel, that they get energy credits for co-generating with their coke ovens, using their coke ovens to generate electricity. The thing is that the rest of the world is moving away from coke used for steel production because they're moving towards carbon-free steel production, and coke is, like I say, the 20th century technology. Another one of the bills that they stuck in there was HB 79, and the title was Permit electric distribution utility establish certain portfolios. Yeah. But what that translates to is they're putting back in decoupling.
What?
Remember decoupling?
No.
It was one of the things they actually took out of HB6 once they got all embarrassed by people going to prison and committing
Yeah.
suicide over it.
Yeah.
Decoupling means taking the amount that you owe for your electricity and removing that, detaching that, decoupling that from the amount of power that you use. So if you are a household that uses 100 kilowatt hours, you're going to pay the same bill as somebody who uses 1,000 kilowatt hours. That's a
Okay.
decoupling, right?
So, rationally speaking, we all need to find a way to monetize electricity in our house, is what you're saying.
Oh, you mean
Like,
start selling to your neighbors, like
Yeah,
run extension cords,
something,
because you're going to
yeah.
pay the same amount as your neighbor, or no matter how much power you use.
Or, I was thinking grow lights, but never mind.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah,
They're
maybe.
free now.
Yeah, basically. Well, and that's what's happened everywhere that they've tried
You
decoupling.
virtually can't afford not to get them.
Yeah, is electricity use just shoots through the roof because, why conserve if it doesn't save you any money? So that's when people start keeping their front doors open when it's 20 degrees out and doing crazy stuff like that. But the utility companies love decoupling because it increases demand, which allows them to build new power plants.
Oh, boy.
And whenever they build a new power plant, they get to charge us beaucoup bucks. They get
Of
to
course,
increase
yeah.
our. So even though it looks like, now you can use as much power as you want without raising your bill actually like doubles and triples a few years down the line because like,
Because you're
we
paying
had
for
to
everybody else. Yeah.
right, we had to build this new coal plant and this new gas plant, and we're going to charge you for that because you're using so much power. So we were there. There were, like I say, there were about 14 or 15 of us there. 8 of us spoke. And the thing is, we were kind of in the center behind the podium, and you don't see us in the video because they used a side camera, but we were literally surrounded by suits. There were roughly 100 really well-dressed people with expensive watches and, nice leather attaché cases and stuff, and they were seated like behind us and all around us on the sides. And these are the corporate lobbyists.
You could have done a lot of damage with, I don't know, say an exploding cola bottle. You just shook up and then took the lid off. I'm just saying.
It would have been a lot of extra dry cleaning.
Yeah. You could have hurt them where they live.
But the thing, of course, is that none of these suits had to speak because they've already had their FaceTime with the legislators individually.
Right.
Hundreds of hours of lobbying and heart-to-heart conversations over dinner and, the meeting, making donations to political campaigns. And I just keep thinking back to Larry Householder's plea, Larry Householder's defense before he was sent to prison for 20 years, that all the corruption he did was just business as usual. He shouldn't be punished because this is just how we do things in Ohio.
Right.
And, so.
Never mind that silly law stuff.
Yeah. It's like we don't, what? Yeah. So.
That's not how I get to do things in Ohio, Joe.
No?
No.
You've never taken a legislator out to dinner and
No.
wined and dined him and talked for hours about.
Nobody in the legislature ever hands me $1 million.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you
I
got
feel
to
very
get on
sad.
that gravy train there.
Yeah.
So the final vote in the Senate subcommittee was 10-3, 10 Republicans. The 3 Democrats, to their credit, on the committee did vote against it. So it was 10 Republicans to 3 Democrats. And then the full Senate voted for it the next day. So it's been through the House and Senate now. The governor has not yet signed it. So HB 308 is not yet law. So if tomorrow you feel like doing some civic duty, I'm sure the governor says they always welcome input from citizens. You could potentially, it's possible he could stop it. I mean, he kind of has made his legacy all the wonderful things he's done for the environment, and he's created a lot of parks and wetlands and stuff like that, which to his credit. But is he going to allow fracking leases to be extended from 3 years to 5 years just because this one legislator, the guy Macaulay?
Because that's in fact going to detract from said legacy some.
Yeah, it kind of, because fracking in state parks hurts the state parks. I'm sorry, you can't
Yep.
say otherwise. So anyway, so that's the situation. That was my experience in Columbus. And if you have any questions or comments about it, please give us a call at 877-909-1007. Okay, now it's time to say thank you to the people who make all this stuff possible. That is our patrons. And our patrons are amazing people who impress me more every day, who've gone to patreon.com. That's Patreon. There they signed up for sponsorship of For a Green Future. They found a membership level that matched their budget. So now every month, painlessly, a little bit of money comes out of their accounts, comes over to us, and that's how we could afford to do all this citizen activist stuff. So thank you so much to our patrons. And I would also like to encourage people to advertise on For a Green Future. If you have a business that's at all nature related or environmentally related, maybe you've got an organic lawn service that doesn't use nasty herbicides and pesticides, we would like to spread the word. We would like to help tell people about you. Maybe you're a car dealer that has some electric vehicles on your lot that you want to move before the tax credits get destroyed by the incoming administration. Now's the time to advertise on For a Green Future. So, okay, Rebecca, your turn. What are we talking about again?
Bilbies.
Bilbies, okay.
Yeah, and actually, I had not heard of them either, but they are a desert-dwelling marsupial omnivore in the genus Macrotus, also called the rabbit bandicoot genus.
Rabbit bandicoot. Okay.
Yeah, I looked this up. What is a bandicoot? And it seems to have something to do with the shape of the nose. And first, they started calling some kind of rat in India that.
Okay.
And then those same people decided, well, this thing over here looks kind of like that rat from India, so I'm just going to call it that. Yeah. So that is how we got the name Bandicoot.
Well, the bandicoot is actually really cute, right?
Yeah.
These are some of the cutest
It's a
critters.
bandicoot, and it has some bands, too,
Yeah.
sometimes. Yeah, so there were two bilbies at the time of colonization, the greater and the lesser was gone by the 1950s, unfortunately. So, the greater one is currently endangered. It's called the Macrotus lagotus, which means the big-eared bandicoot, I think.
Okay.
And bilby is, I'm going to try and say this Aboriginal tribe's name, Uwalarai, something like that.
Okay.
They have a lot of names. They're called pinkies, jackos, or geckos, Weedapur. They have a lot of names and different Aboriginal peoples have for them, apparently. And they're in the order Paramelomorphia, the bandicoots, which, originally they're famous for their muzzle, the bandicoot muzzle. They have big ears that radiate heat. And they apparently, when they say omnivores, one of them is not going to, you're not going to wake up with a bandicoot chewing on your toe or anything. They eat non-vertebrates. They eat bugs and plants and stuff, basically. So I looked and I could not find any negative effects which these little critters have on the world around them. Except that they could theoretically eat too much vegetation if they were in the wrong place, the wrong time, or more likely because people brought in cats and foxes to get rid of the Australian rabbits, and then they all ate all the bandicoots, and just sort of, or they're suddenly gone, and then there's no population control on the bandicoots. So, but yeah, so far there's no actual record of them doing anything negative to the environment at all whatsoever.
Now, when you say Australian rabbits, you mean the invasive
Yeah,
rabbits.
the
They're
European
introduced,
rabbits,
right?
right?
Okay.
Not the possum bunnies,
Okay.
as I'm calling the bilbies, I guess. Um, Threats to them, their survival would include habitat loss and change, competition with other animals like rabbits and livestock. Yeah, the conservation. There's a big conservation and reintroduction effort going on, and part of that they were hawking chocolate bilbies for a while instead of Easter bunnies. Yeah, but they got to deal with predation from cats and foxes, agricultural activities like tree clearing and grazing, changing fire patterns that can burn off the vegetation that provides cover for them to live under, and they're culturally important to a lot of Aboriginal groups too. Yeah, the critters they bring in critters to eat the bunnies, and then they eat the bilbies too, so that's bad. Some benefits would be they are ecosystem engineers with their burrows that aerate the soil and mix in some organic matter. Allows water to penetrate, all kinds of good stuff for the soil. They make little shallow scrapes sometimes in an emergency that will collect leaf litter and seeds, and so plants can grow too. And also, they help. They spread some kind of fungus, mycorrhizal, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, fungi that helps plants absorb nutrients, and that way they can. It's a way to compensate for poor soil, apparently, because if you can absorb nutrients better, then you can grow in not as good soil.
Yeah, I guess I read that their burrows can actually be like 10 feet deep.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
All
you
right.
live in the desert. You want you nice deep burrow for the height of the sunlight there.
Yeah, cool. All right, so check them out. They're cute. When I do the YouTube version of the show, I'll have a nice, cute picture of a bilby up there. But all right, thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Okay, and on to Ecological News. Our first story, and this is a story that was broken on YouTube by DW, which is the Deutsche Welt, the German public TV station, basically. December 11th, they released a story, How a Small Chinese Company Tricked the German State. And essentially, this was a carbon credit story, a carbon credit fraud story.
Uh-oh.
And apparently this company, allegedly called Beijing Carbon, and carbon with a K, so there's immediate suspicion. It's like, Krusty the Clown. Beijing Carbon supposedly faked a whole bunch of projects that were supposed to be carbon capture and storage in order to gain carbon credits.
Oh boy.
And essentially they just didn't do. Essentially the allegation is that, they said, oh, we built a plant here. And so DW sent reporters, and there was no plant. And they said, okay, well, our headquarters is over here. And the reporters found that was an abandoned chicken coop. And then, a couple of the other companies were like, oh, no, our headquarters is actually here. And so they went there, and it turned out to be like private people's apartments. And little old Chinese ladies were like, what are you doing here? Get out of my apartment. It was kind of a interesting story to watch. They got $1 billion from the German government for doing all these non-existent carbon capture projects. The problem is that the auditing is done by private corporations and not by the German government itself. And so apparently there's a big business for these private companies to go and certify these things that apparently don't exist. These projects were supposed to have sequestered millions of tons of CO2. One other thing that another tack they used was there were some some plants that were actually capturing carbon, but they already existed before they applied for the grants to build them. So, so that's a nice little, nice work if you can get it. But essentially, the thing to remember about carbon capture itself is that it's a scam. Okay, it's just sort of an excuse. It's a way for oil companies and gas companies and coal companies to keep burning fossil fuels, with the promise that, oh, we're going to catch the CO2 and it won't get out into the air. But a lot of what they catch, it and do with it once they catch it is they use it to pump into oil fields to pump out more oil and natural gas.
Alrighty.
They use the captured carbon to pressurize oil and gas fields, which, sucks. And so this was a scam, that the idea was that people would buy carbon credits and retire them. And when they first started introducing carbon credits, there were feel-good newspaper stories about like high schools that paid a coal company, like they bought $1,000 worth of carbon credits, and so that's $1,000 worth of carbon that didn't get put into the air. But it's ridiculous. Okay, it does not work. It's a scam, and so it's not surprising that a company would scam the scam. They'd be like, well, let's take this fraud to the next step, the next level, and just not even do it. So big story there. Next, off to Japan, and this is a bad news story. Unfortunately, this is an Nikkei Asia story on 12/12. Quote, Japan shifting back to nuclear power. And so the problem is that after the Fukushima disaster, the energy policies of the governments have been to reduce nuclear power use as much as possible. That was the stated goal in all the energy policies, because they lost a big chunk of their country and they lost, billions of dollars, and they're still spending billions cleaning it up, even though they're doing a terrible job. And so, the people of Japan were insisting, hey, no more nukes. And up until this past month, that was the official policy of the government, that use as little nuclear power as possible, switch over to renewables as much as possible. This is part of the ruling party's strategic energy plan. And so this is bad news. Now, that strategic energy plan is discussing, they're talking about going to a 60% carbon reduction by 2035. So they're talking about increasing the goal, because the current goal is only 46% by 2035. But the whole thing is too little, too late. If Japan only reduces its carbon emissions by 46% by 2035, we'll all be cooked by then. So it would be kind of a Pyrrhic victory, as they say. Okay, next story, Energy and Policy Institute, December 11th. And this story kind of relates to our first topic. And the title is Utilities Charge Customers for Lobbying Corporate Branding and Luxury Lifestyle Expenses. It's a story by Carly Weinman and Etai Vardy on December 11th in Energy and Policy Institute. And essentially what they discovered is that, all those people in suits that were sitting around us, utilities are charging you and me for those people. We're the ones buying their nice watches and their expensive suits and their trips to fancy restaurants. And according to this report, private jet flights, those are fun. Take a you've got a legislator who needs to get down to Florida.
And guess what, folks? They're taking your money to shorten your life, just like the insurance people.
Right. Yeah. And spa services, because you need to have like a spa. You need to relax if you're going to talk about energy policy.
That would make me tense.
With
God
a legislator,
knows.
yeah. So they're charging us, putting on our electric bills, spa services, and just basic lobbying, which one thing about the legislator a lot of people don't know now is that a lot of these laws, like the ones that we were talking about earlier, are actually written by the lobbyists. They just hand the legislator, here's the law we'd like you to do. So that takes money. You got to pay for paper, making copies, and so forth, internet connections. So that's some of the things that we're being charged directly for. And to put it in context, in 2023, that was about $10 billion in rate increases from state regulators around the country. And in 2024, a quarter of the U.S. households reported that they couldn't pay at least one electric bill during 2024. So people are really on the edge in terms of being able to pay for their electricity. So far, 3 states, Connecticut, Colorado, and Maine, have passed specific laws saying that the corporations can't just add all this onto our electric bills. And Ohio should, but it's, I have not seen any motion in this direction from the Ohio legislature. So it's, not terribly good news there.
So I found a thing about Fernald.
Oh,
This is the EPA Ohio.gov
okay.
site, so, grain of salt, but still. The Fernald Preserve is a former nuclear production facility located in rural residential area 18 miles northwest of Cincinnati, Ohio. Site has gone by many names over the years, including Feed Materials Production Center, Fernald Environment Management Project, Fernald Closure Project, but is most often referred to as Fernald. It says here production stopped in July 1989 to focus resources on environmental restoration. So that would have been a few years after I was down there. EPA and Ohio and U.S. EPA oversaw cleanup activities at the site. All remediation, with the exception of ongoing groundwater pumping, was completed in 2006.
Mm-hmm. And that's fairly typical. And the question would be if an independent agency were to go and check how much contamination there is down there. But yeah, so that's where we're at with that. So it's better than having people living in the highest contaminated areas. But as you can tell from the continued necessity of groundwater pumping, the contamination is not gone.
They got a park now called the Fernald Preserve.
That's a very popular thing with nuclear,
Yes.
with radiation contaminated areas, is to turn them into parks, which just means people get irradiated while they're walking.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
It's just it's incentive to walk faster.
Yeah, there you go. Pick up the pace.
There you go.
All right. Thanks, Rebecca, for that Fernald update. InsideEVs.com, a website, December 12th, quote, Global EV survey, 92% of EV drivers won't return to gas cars. So there have been a lot of things on the internet, a lot of memes talking about, there were surveys. Supposedly there was a survey this past summer that said like 3/4 of EV drivers are going to switch back to gas. Well, this was a comprehensive survey. 23,000 electric vehicle car owners surveyed around the world in 18 countries, U.S., Europe, Brazil, by a group called the Global EV Alliance. And they found that only 1% of the 23,000 would go back to gas.
Wow.
4% would switch to a plug-in hybrid as opposed to just a full gas. But so this is in direct contradiction to that study that was widely publicized here in the U.S.
Because why would you need to go back to gas? I mean, you could just you could just like put gas in your electric car if you needed to.
If you have a plug-in hybrid,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, like I've got, but so the question we have to ask is, which of these studies is correct? And the thing is that EV sales are growing all over the world.
But what are these people like? Oh, it's so terrible knowing that I have the option to use electric, that I can't stand it and have to go back to gas. What is that?
Right.
That doesn't really make sense.
But the fact that we're selling more and more electric vehicles suggests that people are not going back to gas. And so, and I could say, once you've driven the EV and you feel that power, that raw power when you hit the accelerator, and you leave behind some guy in a, souped up car that has, like a Chevy or, something big and fast. Name a big, fast car.
I don't know. I don't know anything about cars.
All right. Well, anyway, leaving one of those behind in the dust with your EV is just so satisfying.
No doubt.
Because their motors are going like crazy and they're making a huge racket, and you're just quietly you're just quietly slipping by them, accelerating faster than they can.
I think the racket is like half of what matters to them, though.
Yeah, well,
The noise and the smell.
well, you
It's
could
like,
stick a playing card in the spokes of your car wheel there if you want
Exactly,
noise. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So anyway, in the U.S., EV sales are up 5% third quarter from the second quarter of this year, and they're up 9% from 2023. So, which in 2023 was up 8% from 2022. So, people are buying. We are making the switch. It's supporting my observations as I drove down to Columbus. But the scuttlebutt, the memes are saying the opposite. So there. Once you go electric, you don't go back. That's the lesson here. And one of the next story, one of the main energy sources for electric vehicles, the batteries. They've been working for a while, and there was a story in Interesting Engineering on December 12th. New lithium Challenger zinc sulfur EV battery gets 20% power boost for longer range. And this is a study out of good old Case Western right here in Ohio. And they found that if you just add propylene glycol methyl ether and zinc oxide to your sulfur zinc battery, it increases the power by 20%. You can get more recharging, and it reduces the creation of what are called dendrites, which are these little spiky things that grow inside batteries and eventually short them out. And so it does all those things at once, and it just makes the sulfur batteries more practical. So people always say, people keep dumping all of lithium's problems on electric cars, but you can have electric cars that use sulfur batteries and not lithium batteries. And so the problem isn't an electric car problem, it's a lithium battery. It's a lithium problem. And, Elon Musk is the one who turned us down the lithium road. But sulfur has always been there, and it's super cheap compared to lithium. And you don't need all the terrible trace elements that you have to get, do lots of mining for. And MIT, for example, is working on an aluminum sulfur battery that uses a fraction of the resources that a regular lithium battery uses. So the problem is not electric cars. The problem is lithium, and we can solve that problem through engineering. Okay, just two more stories, and we're almost done here. And still time to give us a call at 877-909-1007. This is a story in the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists on December 12th. And this isn't exactly an atomic science story. This is more of a Frankenstein 1950s horror movie kind of story. Title: Scientists urge halt to research on creating synthetic mirror bacteria that could evade human immunity and disrupt ecosystems. And so what this is, all right, all life on Earth, all life on Earth uses, we create molecules inside the body that do all kinds of things. You've got your fats, your DNA, your RNA. All those molecules are what are called right-handed molecules. And what you can do in chemistry is you can create a molecule that has chemically the same properties, same number of all the atoms, but it's made in a mirror image. Those are called left-handed molecules. And scientists still aren't sure why life chose right-handed molecules, but they have figured out that life could have gone the left-handed path, but didn't. And so the problem is now the scientists that have been researching this saying that we're on the verge of being able to create entire organisms based on molecules that are left-handed and not right-handed. The problem for us living things on Earth is that if you made a bacteria that functioned in this manner with nothing but left-handed molecules, no immune system in the world, plant or animal, would be able to stop it. Because
okay, but they're thinking about doing this?
yes, they're actually,
okay.
some scientists are working towards it. And in fact, it was one of the scientists who was taking us closest to it that she said, "Wait a minute, this is insane."
Yeah.
What am I
let's not say
doing?
we did. As
Right.
Griffiths and
It's
Gallant used
one
to
of those
say.
one of those Bugs Bunny moments. Remember that? There was that one Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's taking a sledgehammer to a bomb and he's about to hit it and he goes, "What am I doing?" and drops. That's what happened to these biochemical researchers. They sent a letter. They published it in Science, and basically saying we should not even create this because the slightest error, a single bacterium getting out of the lab could literally kill everything. Because none of us, no plants, no animals, none of us multicellular organisms would have any defense against a left-handed organism.
Tabula ever-loving rasa, that would be.
Right. So that's good advice from those scientists. If you're able to scare the wits out of a genetic scientist, you're pretty serious.
Yeah,
so let's hope
probably so, yeah.
let's hope this results in some laws and stuff because, yeah. All right. Yeah. So just basically, if one of these bacteria got out, it could invade and digest everything.
Wow.
The Earth could be reduced
So
to
it's
just
actually
a pile of
the alchemist's universal solvent, kind of.
yes, exactly.
Wow.
The world could be reduced to just a pile of bacteria. So,
Some crusty old medieval dude is in a pointy hat is very, very gratified by this news,
yeah,
I'm
it's
sure.
like, see, there is such a thing. All right, final story. After all that doom and gloom and potential elimination of life on Earth, Greenpeace. We had the Greenpeace's lead lawyer there on they're being sued by oil companies, harassing lawsuits that are designed to trip up the whole organization. And we got some good news from Greenpeace. There were actually 4 of these lawsuits, and 2 of them just got dropped yesterday, actually. Shell had a lawsuit that they dropped, and Total Energies had a lawsuit that they lost. Now, the 2 remaining lawsuits that could potentially cost Greenpeace hundreds of millions of dollars and essentially destroy them as an organization. One is Energy Transfer, and that's the one that our guest a few months ago was talking about. That lawsuit is still going. And another is by a company called ENI. And so those 2 lawsuits are still going, but Greenpeace won 2 out of the 4. So hopefully the 2 that they won will help set precedent that'll make it much more difficult for the other 2 to succeed. And hopefully Greenpeace will come out of this stronger than ever. But at the moment, it's still a big threat. If either of those other 2 lawsuits goes forward, Greenpeace would essentially get hamstrung. So, but it's good news that they've won 2 out of the 4 battles. Well, that's all I had to talk about today. We still have a couple minutes left to talk.
Want to hear more about the Fernald Preserve Visitor Center?
Oh, there's a visitor center.
Yeah, it's like, if you're the kind of person who wants to go tour Chernobyl and stuff, you can see this for much cheaper.
Do they issue you like radiation exposure badges when you go to the visitor center?
I don't think so.
No? Oh.
But yeah.
All right. Oh, sure. Yeah.
The Fernald Preserve Visitor Center commemorates the rich and varied history of the Fernald Preserve, Ohio site. The Visitor Center offers a series of exhibits focused on the Cold War uranium metals production industry, kind of like little Fernald North here, what we got in Toledo there off of Detroit Avenue. The subsequent environmental cleanup and today's ongoing legacy management. The site's uranium production and environmental cleanup eras are placed within a broad historical perspective, acknowledging geologic history and indigenous American Indians and European Americans, settlers who lived on the land. Admission to the visitor center is free, and meeting spaces at the facility are available free of charge and non-commercial use by organized groups.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's exciting.
I always considered the fact that the indigenous cultures here, the Native Americans, never developed nuclear power as like a sign that they were actually kind of more advanced than us in some ways.
Yeah, that was smart.
Yeah.
Actually, that was pretty smart of them.
Yeah, actually, it is a fascinating subject because there was a lot of metallurgy in native culture, especially up in Michigan. They had huge metal works where they made copper and other metals.
Wow.
And they just kind of stopped. And, a lot of archaeologists, Western trained archaeologists are like, well, why would they take a step back? And I am kind of like, well, they had it for hundreds of years.
Right.
And they probably saw the environmental impact of it, that the whole region gets contaminated with heavy metals when you do smelting. And I think they might have just decided to stop. It might have been like, these fancy arrowheads actually aren't worth like killing all the animals that we're supposed to be hunting with them.
Right.
Yeah. So
could be they took a good hard look at the situation.
Yeah. So, but I want to emphasize again, and we always like to emphasize on this show, that having a green future is actually better. It's more comfortable. Your cars will go faster. Your houses will be warmer.
No dogs are allowed at the Fernald Preserve.
Oh, right, because they could get into the contaminated dirt.
Right.
There'll be
your
no
dogs
more
have enough problems.
Right, no more contaminated dirt that your dog might roll in.
All that chemical on the lawn. It has
A green future is a better future than the present that we have right now. So let's all work for that green future. Get some solar panels on your house. Go get your electric car before the tax credits disappear. And come on back here next week and listen to another hour of For a Green Future. That's it for this show. Oh, we want to say, Mick, keep getting better.
Go, Mick.
All right. And that's it. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
We are signing off.
I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting,